When I first started doing makeup, I was still in high school. That means that I did a lot of homecoming and prom makeup. At the very beginning, I would only do makeup for people that I knew personally or that were close friends. But after the second year of me doing makeup, I started having people that I had never even met before reach out and ask me to do their makeup. I guess it's also important to note here that I went to a pretty big high school and my graduating class was almost 500 people. But anyways, I got a DM on Instagram from this girl asking me if I could do her homecoming makeup. We had mutual friends, so she wasn't completely a stranger, but I had never met her before. Before the day of homecoming rolled around, I reached out to her and let her know that I would be charging $20 and she could pay in cash or through Venmo. She agreed to pay the $20 and then sent me pictures of the makeup look she wanted. Flash forward to the day of homecoming, I had about 6 people I was doing makeup for and people were coming in and out of my house like crazy. When this girl showed up for her appointment, I noticed that she didn't have her wallet or anything with her in her hand, but at this point in me doing makeup, I hadn't figured out how to ask for payment politely beforehand. Even though at the beginning I was already skeptical, I went ahead and did her makeup anyway. When I finished doing her makeup, she stood up and was like, "Okay, well I guess I'm gonna go now. I'm sure you have other people to get to, bye." And before I could stop her, she was already out the door. Every other person I had done makeup for that day had already paid me, so I wasn't super worried about getting paid right away. But then I saw her the next Monday at school and I asked her if she realized that she hadn't paid me for her makeup on Saturday. She acted like she had no idea what I was talking about, but said if I still wanted her to pay me, just to text her after school. I texted her and sent her my Venmo code, but she never paid me. I decided just to let it go because this had never happened before. Later that school year, prom came around and I started having people ask me to do their makeup for that. And what do you know, she DMs me. I told her this time the price would be $30 and I would still be accepting cash or Venmo, but to please have the payment ready before I started her makeup. When she came to my house on the day of prom to get her makeup done, she did not have her payment ready. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And I told her if she couldn't pay, I couldn't do her makeup.
Story time. 2 clients tried scamming me PT1. I had 2 clients come in at the same time. I finished one girl and she left right after. She told me her friend would pay for the both of them. When I finished the second girl, she told me she would send it at home. She said her phone was dying and her bank's app wasn't working. I hear way too many horror stories where clients leave and they never pay, so I wasn't having it. I told her she should contact someone that's able to send the money because I needed it before she left. She got annoyed, paid, and left. The next day she messaged me saying both their nails broke off completely and wanted to come in 3 weeks. I told her come within the next few days and she said no. I kept an eye on them and you won't believe.
This is a story time about the time I dated the school shooter. This might be a long story, so please bear with me. Before you form any opinions on anyone in the story, please wait all the way until the end. Trust me, you're gonna want to listen to this story time. There was this boy who went to my school and he was really shy and he got bullied a lot. He got bullied a lot because he was a lot more feminine than other guys. And I'm just the type of person to give people the benefit of the doubt, so I went ahead and started talking to him more to see the type of person that he actually was. He didn't sit with anybody during lunch, so one day I went up to him and I sat down right next to him and I started talking to him. Immediately, I loved this boy, everything about him. He was extremely sweet and considerate and understanding, and I knew that if other people took the time to get to know him, they would like him too. So we exchanged numbers and we started to FaceTime a lot. As we started to FaceTime more, I started to notice things that were a little off about him. Every single conversation that we had, he would always have to bring up about how much he hated this one boy in his tech class and how he would shoot up the school just to get rid of him, like for part 2. This is part 2 about how I dated the school shooter. So let me backtrack a little bit from part 1. We exchanged numbers, we started to make plans to hang out outside of school, and we just started talking more outside of school, and eventually we started dating. He never really talked about this guy in his tech class until we started dating. Keep that in mind. For some reason, that guy in his tech class really bothered him. Like I said, he started talking about how he would shoot up the school just to get rid of this guy. At first, I thought it was just a joke and he was just saying that. Until he kept saying it. He started being so serious about it and he started planning it out and exactly what he would do when he did it. That started to scare me, and so I decided that I was going to record one of these conversations, just in case. During that conversation, he said he planned to shoot up the school the next day. He said, in these exact words, "Fuck it, you know what? I'm just going to do it tomorrow." Then he tells me to not come to school the next day. That's when I know that he was actually being serious. Immediately after, I started writing up an email to the school like for part 3. This is going to be part 3 of the time I dated the school shooter. So his exact plan was to use this new gun that his dad had just recently bought. And his exact goal was to get rid of that guy in his tech class. And his tech class was in the beginning of the school day. So after I wrote that email to the school about his plan and inserted the recording that I secretly took of him admitting to it, I realized that I had sent that email at around 12:05 a.m. Most of the time, the teachers don't ever email you back unless the school day has already started. That morning, for some reason, everything in my gut was telling me I sent the email too late. They're not going to open it in time. They're not going to see it in time. My mom just thought that I was sick that day, so I told her that I was going to take a walk around the neighborhood. And I totally forgot to mention that he lived in my neighborhood. I told my mom I was going on a walk, but I was actually going to his house to tell his parents. By the time I got there, his mom told me that the dad is driving him to school. I told her his plan, let her listen to the recording. So she checked where the dad put the gun and it was not there. She called the dad to tell him to check his bag. The dad said he had already dropped him off at school and he was halfway home. His tech class was first period, like for part 4. This is going to be part 4 of the time I dated the school shooter. So let me do a little recap. So like I said, I ran to his house that morning to try to tell his parents his plan about shooting up the school, and I showed them the recording for proof. I was only able to tell the mom his plan because the dad had already taken him to school. She checked where this new gun he was planning on using was supposed to be and it wasn't there. Then when she called the dad to tell him to check their son's bag, the dad said 1, the gun should still be there because he hadn't touched it since he put it away, and 2, he had already dropped him off at school and he was halfway home. I didn't even tell my mama where I was going. I hopped in the car with my boyfriend's mom and we zoomed. The dad had taken a U-turn and he was speeding towards the school too. At this point, first period was about to start in 5 minutes. It was us against time. We were passing cars, running red lights. When we got to the school, the mom barely parked the car. The dad was already in there, I'm pretty sure. But as we were running inside, the dad was coming out with my boyfriend. This is what happened after, like for part 5. This is going to be part 5 about the time I dated the school shooter. Like I said, my boyfriend's parents and I sped to the school and got there in time to stop him from carrying out his plan of shooting the school. I'm guessing the dad told them that there was like an emergency dentist appointment or something. Once they got in the car, the dad made my boyfriend open his bag, and there was the gun. Child, the way my heart... You hear that? That's how fast my heart was beating at the time. It was so hard to believe that he actually brought that gun to school, like he was actually going to carry out that plan. But from what I've seen, he was just so sweet and just does not seem like that type of guy at all. Mind you, his family was a very respected family in our neighborhood. They were super sweet. Everybody loved them. They just knew that the son was antisocial. After all this happened, I did not tell anybody about this. Like, I'm a real bitch. I did not tell my best friends. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell nobody. Some time had passed and I hadn't talked to him. He wasn't coming to school and I was actually blocked on all socials. Even his parents blocked me. Went to his house multiple times, knocked on the door, nobody answered. Eventually someone told me that they moved, but I still had some unfinished business, like for part 6. So this is gonna be me finishing the unfinished business. Like I said, him and his family moved. They didn't tell anybody anything. They just packed their stuff and they left. Everyone in the neighborhood was so confused. But I kept my mouth shut. Like I said, I'm a real bitch. I needed to find the answers as to why. Why did he want to get rid of that tech guy so bad? Well. So I went to tech first period just to see who was all in the classroom. I didn't actually go in the classroom. I was just standing outside the classroom. Based on where my ex was saying that he sat in the room, I figured out who the tech guy was. As soon as the bell rang for first period to be over, I ran to that tech class. I stopped that guy that my boyfriend was talking about. I told him everything. And that is when he admitted to me that one day, they were hanging out. Mind you, this boy is a senior. My ex was a sophomore. They hooked up, but my ex was ashamed of what he did, so he threatened to say that he was taken advantage of. That boy said, well, I'm going to tell people the truth then if you're going to do that. So basically, my ex was embarrassed of his sexuality. Guessing after we started dating, he started to get super ashamed of what he did. And that's why he decided to shoot up the school.
Story time about how I got bullied my last year of high school by the most popular girl. Okay, so this is my story time. A lot of you requested one, but I'm also at the airport, so sorry for any noise. So most of my high school years were spent in Nicaragua, except for my last year of high school. You see, I booked a show in Miami, so I had to move to the US. I was also doing modeling, commercials, and a lot of radio. I enrolled in the local high school, and it was like literally culture shock for me. I had never experienced an American high school, American parties, or even like actually mingled with American kids. I was really shocked to see how like adult they were. For example, boys and girls were doing adult things. I was constantly being invited to parties where people were drinking, but I never actually went. So the most popular girl in school decided to befriend me in quotation marks. By the way, there were so many times where I spent lunch in the bathroom like Caddy from Mean Girls. It was like Mean Girls, but real life. So this popular girl, she was also a model, and we kind of bonded over that. But behind my back, she had a bet to see which boy would take me to prom. She wanted to see how far this boy could get with me, if you know what I mean. Part 2 might not be up, sorry. Part 2 of how I got bullied by the most popular girl in school. This is my story time. So this popular girl who befriended me had a bet with boys to see which one would take me to prom. Specifically because she wanted to see how far they would get with me on prom night, if you know what I mean. I kept saying no to every single boy. Because I was the new girl, I was constantly getting hit on, but a lot of these boys had girlfriends. Well, since I said no to every single boy, this mean girl decided to print out flyers of the show that I was in. So basically the poster of the show. And when I got to school the next day, there were so many posters of me on the walls, on the floor, with a lot of things drawn on my face. They were even in the boys' locker room. Then someone made up the rumor that I did that, because supposedly I wanted everyone to know that I was a working actress. I was really embarrassed, but at the same time, I kind of thought it was funny, and this really upset the popular girl. So she decided to take it a step further. She invited me to her house one day, and because I thought she was my friend, I decided to go. She cooked me pasta and we talked for a while. Then 2 boys show up. She told me one of them would be my prom date. Part 3 of how I got bullied by the most popular girl in school. This is my story, by the way. So I'm at the popular girl's house, and suddenly 2 boys show up and she says one of them was my date. That's when I told her that I did not want to date for prom. And then the boy asked to speak to me. I talked to him and I told him that I definitely did not want to go on a date with him and that I didn't even know him. That's when he told me that my friend had set everything up, and she told him that I liked him a lot. Well, I told him that that was not true, and I basically went home. A few days later, she started a rumor saying that I was totally in love with her and that I forced her to kiss me. Yeah, she's crazy. That's when people started calling me horrible, horrible names. But the joke's on her because I was so used to getting bullied in Nicaragua. After school one day, she comes up to me and starts telling me why she doesn't like me. She was so angry she started to cry. She said that she was the pretty girl and that she was the model in school. I literally just walked away from her. I went to prom with no date, which was so fun. I graduated and then I kept working. Guess who slid into my DMs a few weeks ago asking to hang out? That's right, the popular girl. I think she must have seen my TikTok or something. Should I actually go out with her and tell her what I think? Or should I just leave her on red? You guys decide.
When I was 24, me and my sister moved into an apartment together. At the time, I was going to college to get my master's, and she was going in to get her degree. The rent was $500 a month. I know, cheap. We only paid $250 each. But the neighborhood was bad. There was a lot of crackhead, gangs. There was a shooting just about every week. I know, just crazy. Anyways, one day in the middle of the night, we get a hard banging on our door, and it's a lady calling out for help. When I opened it, she had a black eye, she was bruised up, and her forehead was bleeding. I asked what's going on, and she replied her boyfriend is trying to kick her and her kids out of their place. She explained she has a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old, and her boyfriend is throwing all of their things out. So I walked over back to her apartment, which was 2 floors down. When we finally reached the apartment, the whole apartment was on fire. She screamed and said her babies were in there. Come back for part 2. This is part 2 of how my neighbor's boyfriend set her apartment on fire with her children inside. If you didn't watch part 1, go watch that so you can understand this part. So, like I said, the apartment was on fire and she was screaming about her kids, and she tried to run in and get her kids, but I stopped her because there was no way she and her kids were going to make it out alive. Few seconds later, her boyfriend walks up and says, "Let her go." And she runs over to him and swings on him a couple times and says, "What did you do? Get them out." And he replied, "I told you to leave, right?" She falls to her knees, and at that point, she just stops crying. So I ran upstairs calling for help, telling everyone to get out and call the fire department. The fire starts to quickly spread, and everyone is coming out of their apartments. When I went back to the area where the lady was, her boyfriend disappeared, and I picked her up from off the ground. I brung her into the parking lot where everyone else was. After 20 minutes, the fire department finally shows up. Come back for part 3. This is part 3 of how my neighbor's boyfriend set her apartment on fire with her children inside. So, like I said, the fire department finally shows up after 20 minutes. I told them there were kids inside, and they went up to find them. They put the fire out. Right after, a firefighter came up to me and said there was no one in there, and I told him no, there were 2 kids. A couple minutes later, a few detectives and cops came up to me and asked me a few questions about the scene, asking things like if I know who started it and about my neighbors. Couple minutes later, there was an old man, which I found out was one of my neighbors. He came from the side of the apartment complex screaming that there was a little boy on his back, lying on the ground, saying that he couldn't move. So quickly, the detectives go over to where my neighbor said the boy was. I'm running out of time. Part 4 will be up soon. This is part 4 of how my neighbor's boyfriend set her apartment on fire with her children inside. after one of my neighbors claimed they saw a little boy on the ground in the back of the apartment complex, and the boy's arm was pillows wrapped up in a comforter. When the detective got the paramedics to pick the boy up, they took the comforter he had and they opened it, and inside was a baby. After the whole situation was over, they took me in for questioning. Also, by the way, they admitted the lady into the hospital as well because she was bruised up really bad, and anytime anyone asked her anything, she was mute. During my time in the police station, they told me about the little boy. Come to find out, that little boy on the ground in back of the apartment complex was her son. They said he wrapped his baby sister up to protect her from getting hurt. Baby girl was fine. The pillows he wrapped her in softened her fall. But for the little boy, he was paralyzed from...
I found out my husband was sleeping with my sister. And here's the full story. No, I didn't find them sleeping together. No, I didn't find any text messages. A little backstory, Ben and I have been together for 10 years and have been married for 3 years. So it's not like it's a recent relationship. Honestly, I wouldn't care. Good thing we didn't have any kids because I would not know how to deal with that. Everything started getting weird after we got married. He was always tired from work. He would never want to spend time with me on his days off. He would actually leave me to go spend time with his friends, which was a lie. Well, at one point, I got sick of it and I started asking him questions. Like if he still wanted to be with me, did I do something wrong? Even though I knew I didn't do anything wrong, but you never know. But he would always avoid answering me. A year and a half after our marriage, it started getting even weirder. He wouldn't leave his phone laying around, and every time he was on his phone, he would hide it from me. And that's when my gut feeling started. I decided to download Tinder, Bumble, Grindr, every dating app out there. I made multiple profiles of different women. I'm running out of time. Follow me for part 2. I found out my husband was sleeping with my sister, part 2. I made multiple profiles on all of these dating apps, and these profiles were from women that are very, very close to me, my best friends and my sisters. Because listen, it's always someone close to you. At least that's what I like to think. Setting up all those accounts took too long, but it was definitely worth it. I only found him on one dating app, and that was on Bumble, and he matched with my sister. I decided to start the conversation with, "Hey Ben, that's so awkward, we matched." It took him about 2 days to answer me back because he was off on those 2 days. Apparently he deletes the app on his days off, and then when he gets back to work, he installs them again. His first message to my sister was, "Hey, I miss you so much, I can't believe we stopped talking." I decided to go with it and I said, "Just talking?" He said, "Of course not. You know what I mean. I miss your body. I miss everything about you." Long story short, I waited for him to get home from work. I showed him the messages. I decided to get a divorce, and I also got everything. Do you guys want to know what she did to her sister? Follow me and comment below.
Story time about how my neighbor killed my dog. So a little background information. When I was about 3 years old, my parents got me a German Shepherd. And my neighbors who lived next to us absolutely loved our dog. And so did their kids. Like their dad literally put a doggy door in the fence, so that way our dog could go back and forth from our house to his house. Well, when I was about 8 years old, my neighbors decided to sell their house. So he told us that he had to take out the doggy door because the people that were buying his house hated animals. Well, the people who had just bought his house, they ended up moving in before he could take out the doggy door. So our new neighbors asked us if we could put like a piece of plywood in front of the door so that way our dog couldn't get through. And they said that they would do the same to their side of the fence. So my dad said, yeah, he put a piece of plywood in front of there. Well, my dog, Gabe, the one night that my brother let him out, he ended up getting the plywood off of the doggy door. Well, my brother literally had to crawl through the doggy door to get the dog before one of them saw him in the yard. Like for part 2 about how my neighbors killed my dog. So like I said, my brother let the dog out and my dog got the piece of plywood off of the door. And my brother had to crawl through the doggy door to get my dog out of our neighbor's yard so that way our neighbors wouldn't wake up and know that he got through. But whenever my brother went to go get Gabe, he realized that my neighbors didn't even have a piece of plywood on their side of the fence or anything. So my brother told my dad, and my dad went over there the next day to talk to them. And he pretty much said, I'm not going to have a piece of fucking plywood on my side of the fence if you're not going to be doing anything on yours to prevent my dog from going into your yard. And they were like, oh, well, your old neighbors never took out the doggy door. And my dad was like, that's not our fucking fault. Well, then our new neighbors said, if your dog all of a sudden becomes sick or just does not come back, don't be surprised. My dad decided to replace the door himself.
Well, once Gabe realized that the doggy door was gone, when we would let him outside, he would literally just sit there and bark at the fence. Well, 2 weeks later, Gabe ended up passing away, and we found out it's because our neighbors were giving him rat poison.